The Las Vegas Raiders dropped another game to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we're at the point where the Raiders are having arguably one of the worst seasons over the last 15 years. At 2-11, the Raiders don't look good. There's no hope at all right now with the quarterback situation. Coming in this week, the Raiders thought maybe we had a little bit of something with Aiden O'Connell. We obviously saw O'Connell have a lot of success against the Kansas City Chiefs. And obviously, coming into this game against the Buccaneers, he was not able to replicate that success. And I think just watching Aiden O'Connell out there, you can tell this guy's definitely not the future of the Raiders. Although last week, he showed some upside, right? There were moments within the game. One of the things I talked about in the preview video was the fact that the Chiefs blitzed the Raiders a lot. And with that, Aiden O'Connell was able to kind of take advantage of that. The Buccaneers, although they are a blitz-heavy team, actually blitzed a lot less. And the Raiders just weren't able to make it happen. And I think we're at the point where the Raiders got to go out and get another quarterback. Now, before we get into really analyzing some of these different players, I want to just kind of give prayers to Aiden O'Connell. That injury that this guy took was unnecessary. Kalijah Kancey should be suspended for that hit. Aiden O'Connell took probably 3 steps, and Kancey still hit him in the back. And as he got hit in the back, he tried to stop himself ultimately, and you could tell that knee kind of just went right underneath him. And you can tell the knee kind of gave out. And he was essentially put into an air cast, and he was carted off the field. I'm pretty sure Aiden O'Connell has some sort of ACL injury. I think that's kind of what makes sense at this point. But regardless of that, I hope Aiden O'Connell is okay. I hope he does bounce back. And even if the Raiders go out and get another quarterback, Aiden O'Connell can still be a backup for the Raiders and be here, hopefully long term. We'll see what ends up happening. But I hope Aiden O'Connell is okay. But just kind of analyzing the play of Aiden O'Connell. One of the things we saw against the Chiefs was they blitzed him a lot. And one of the things the Buccaneers did not do as much is they didn't blitz him as much. And the reason why is because if you don't blitz Aiden O'Connell, what that means is he has to go through the reads, he has to go through the progressions. And there's always going to be plays where the defense takes away what the offense is trying to do, right? Guys are essentially covered. And in those moments specifically, what ends up happening is, as a quarterback, you got to be able to create plays. And we saw Aiden O'Connell end up taking a sack a couple times. He ended up taking a couple of hits a couple of times, and the ball kind of just sailed out of bounds. We didn't see the same guy that was able to push the ball downfield. And again, I think that comes down to the quarterback limitations. And I think we're at the point where the Raiders got to go out. They got to get a quarterback. We've been hearing a lot about some of the quarterbacks coming out of this class. Some people are like Shedeur Sanders is not a first-round quarterback. Some people are saying, regardless of Shedeur Sanders, if you go Cam Moore, he's not a first-round quarterback. People are talking about all these different quarterbacks. Drew Aller's another guy that's been getting a lot of hype, especially with the type of game he had against Oregon yesterday specifically. But we're at the point where the Raiders got to go out and get a quarterback, because what I saw Baker Mayfield consistently do for the Buccaneers against the Raiders was really, really nice, right? Just to be able to see a quarterback do the things that a quarterback has to do, it'd be really nice for the Raiders to kind of be able to get that production out of their quarterback. And we're at the point where we don't get that, right? And we're probably not going to get that at this point with the guys we have, right? Gardner Minshew was the closest guy that could have given us that potential, but even then, Minshew can't really play within structure. And if you don't have a quarterback that can play within structure, right, that's going to be the most important aspect of quarterback play. The offensive coordinator says we're going to run dagger to the right. You got to hit it in stride, right? You got to hit that dig route in stride in that structure of the offense. And then you got to have the ability to create, right? And the Raiders don't have a guy that can do both. We have one guy that can kind of run around but can't play within structure. We have another guy that plays within structure but then cannot create if the defense takes away the first couple of reads, right? So to be able to watch Baker Mayfield, I hope the Raiders can get to a quarterback that just can consistently make plays the way Baker Mayfield does. Let's talk about some of the other guys that we kind of saw within this game. One of the guys I really wanted to watch in this game was Sincere McCormick, and he answered every single one of the questions I had. I am confident Sincere McCormick can be a part of the plan long term. Now, the Raiders got to still get a running back, right? There's no reason why you don't go out and draft another running back. I think the best teams right now have multiple backs that they can kind of go to. You look at the Buccaneers as an example. They had Sean Tucker, who's their third-string running back, run for 47 yards on us. Their best running back, Bucky Irving, did not even play, right? He was hurt. He had 4 carries. He had a hip injury kind of coming in. He ended up not playing this game because of the fact that he was hurt, right? But it just makes you think that then you got Rachaad White, who went for 90 yards on the Raiders. So, the Buccaneers are a good example. They have multiple running backs. The Raiders got to get to that point as well, and I think Sincere McCormick can be one of those multiple running backs. I think having 2 is probably good, and I think the Raiders got to realistically draft the guy in the second round this year. If you want a guy that makes an impact, second round running backs will be able to kind of do that for you. And there's probably 4 or 5 really, really good running backs coming out. In fact, the 2 running backs last year that were highly regarded, Jonathan Brooks as well as Trey Benson, would probably be like running back 5 and 6 in this class, right? That's how much better this class is than last year's class. So I think Tom Telesco may have thought about that before ultimately making that decision. But the Raiders gotta be able to get it right? Sincere McCormick obviously looked good, 15 carries, 78 yards. The offensive line looked pretty good as well. I felt like pass protection wasn't really that much of an issue. Truth be told, I feel like our offensive line outplayed the Buccaneers offensive line, which is kind of surprising because the Bucs offensive line is probably better than the Raiders at this point. But Baker Mayfield ended up taking 4 sacks, and you just got to give credit to the defense. I mentioned this multiple times at this point. The Raiders secondary is an elite secondary. And I know we got guys like Jack Jones that does sometimes get burned. But we still have an elite scheme out there, right? We're confusing these quarterbacks. We're making it hard on these guys. Now, obviously, Baker Mayfield ended up throwing for 295 yards. But we gave up probably like 4 plays for 150 yards, right? A big part of the yards he had came on like 4 or 5 plays. And it just happened to also be, the Raiders are kind of trying to take their shot. They're trying to be able to get after the quarterback, maybe get off on 3rd down or whatever. And they end up kind of getting caught. But yeah, when you think about the Las Vegas Raiders and kind of think about how the season has went up to this point, I think the Raiders on the defensive side have a really, really good defense going for them. Clavon Chasen looked good. He had an interception as well. Maxx Crosby continuously does his thing, although I know we're going to say he doesn't look as good. They just continuously do their thing, And when you think about what the Las Vegas Raiders have to kind of work with, the fact that we weren't able to get a quarterback, the defense is doing so much better right now than the offense. And one of the things I noticed in today's game was outside of the actual scheme, the players are bought in. Like Adam Butler, playing for a team that's 2-11, still coming out there, play out, and dominating. And then you got a guy outside of that like Maxx Crosby coming in every single day. You got a guy like even Jack Jones. I know he gave a touchdown today. He also had technically two big plays. One was an interception. One was a pass breakup. The pass breakup, they called the PI on him, and he intercepted it the next play anyways. But, there's guys that are bought in, and I think for the Raiders, that's all you can kind of do as you go forward, right? You got guys that are buying in. All you got to do as a team is get that quarterback and really figure it out as you go forward. Another guy I wanted to kind of see take that step in this game, especially since he's been this is his 3rd game officially back, was Michael Mayer. Mayer had 7 catches for 68 yards. That's a great game for Michael Mayer, right? Considering the fact that he's the 2nd tight end for the Raiders, he had a really, really good game. He got the targets for the first time, but also keep in mind, he's comfortable out there as well. And I think for the Raiders, having Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Sincere McCormick's look good as well. Those are 4 guys that actually look good out there. Whatever quarterback you end up bringing in at whatever point, that quarterback's going to have weapons, but you still got to add maybe 2 more weapons. If you're the Raiders, got to get a true number 1 wide receiver. Then you got to add a running back, a real threat through the run game. If you're able to add those 2 things with the quarterback, and all of that's possible in this offseason, the Raiders could 100% go into this offseason. They can go out and buy a wide receiver, right? Which is probably the only thing I would buy if I'm the Raiders. Think about this. The Raiders can literally go out there and say, we're going to spend, $15 to $30 million on one of these wide receivers. T. Higgins, Mari Cooper's a guy that you might be able to potentially bring back. There's guys out there the Raiders can ultimately have, and you buy a wide receiver, you draft the running back, you draft the quarterback at round 1 and 2, and that's it. Your offense is set to go. And then maybe even in the 3rd round, you take a guard. Right? Take a guy that's physical, that can set the tone. And to me, that's a roster that can actually compete. Right? Because think about it. The Raiders are down by 1 touchdown against the Buccaneers, leading late into the 4th quarter. That's with our 3rd quarterback, right? Imagine if we just have a good quarterback that can actually be a solid quarterback, right? If the Raiders are able to have a quarterback that's solid and a guy that can maybe play from ahead, or a guy that not even just fires guys up, but, generally speaking, a guy that could actually put points up. 13 points isn't going to win you games. Imagine if a quarterback can come in here and say, we're going to put up 32 points or whatever it is, right? I just think the Raiders got to figure it out, man. It's such a frustrating season. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is the hardest season that I think it's been for me covering the Raiders. I've been covering them for 5 years. This has been the hardest, year for me covering the Raiders, right? Um, just ending the video talking a little bit about the actual draft. If you guys have not been following like the draft order, the Raiders right now hold the number 1 overall pick. The Raiders, will have whatever shot they want at whatever quarterback. The New York Giants took the Saints all the way to the final moments of the game. They attempted a field goal, they ended up missing. It was like a 30-yard field goal. I don't know how they missed it. But if the Giants end up winning, then the Raiders at this point will have the number 1 overall pick. At this point, even if the Giants and Raiders lose out, it's not guaranteed that the Raiders have the number 1 overall pick because the strength of schedule changes every week, right? So as the season kind of comes to an end, some teams will win, some teams will lose. Strength of schedule could change. But the Raiders are at this point, right, where we got to figure it out, man. And I think we will. As frustrating as this season has been for the Raiders, as we go into this next season, right? As soon as the Raiders go into this next season, with the quarterback potentially, you're a lot better, right? You're just a lot better. The defense is going to continue to do their thing. We'll see what ends up happening, man. It's frustrating. It's super, super frustrating, but it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think, man. Thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. We will continue to cover the Raiders going into the next couple of weeks until the season ultimately comes to an end. We got, I think, 4 games left, so there's still some football left, right? Wow, 1 month left. So let me know what you guys think, man. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.